There comes a moment in every person's life when they realize the biggest obstacle standing between them and their dreams is their own mind. Tony Robbins has spent decades studying what separates people who thrive from those who merely survive. And the answer is not talent, not luck, not even hard work alone. It's the patterns running silently inside your brain. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every decision you make. It's all wired into a system that was built years ago, often without your permission. The good news? That system can be changed. Your brain is not a fixed machine. It is a living, breathing, adaptable organ that responds to what you feed it. Tony Robbins calls this process rewiring, the deliberate act of breaking old mental patterns and installing new, powerful ones. It doesn't happen by accident. It happens by choice, by repetition, and by an unshakable commitment to growth. The life you want already exists. The only thing missing is the mind that believes it's possible. Today, we stop running old programs. Today, we start the rewire. Your beliefs are not just thoughts. They are the invisible architecture of your entire life. Every action you take, every risk you avoid, every relationship you build or destroy, all of it traces back to what you believe, deep down, about yourself and the world around you. Most people never stop to question their beliefs. They simply live inside them, like a prisoner who never realizes the cell door was never locked. Tony Robbins calls these beliefs your operating system. And just like a computer, your results can only be as good as the program running underneath. The dangerous thing about beliefs is that they feel like facts. When you believe you are not smart enough, not worthy enough, not capable enough, your brain doesn't treat that as an opinion. It treats it as absolute truth. It filters every experience through that lens, looking for evidence to confirm what it already thinks it knows. This is called confirmation bias, and it is one of the most powerful forces keeping people stuck. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you believe it to be. These beliefs didn't appear out of nowhere. They were planted by parents, teachers, failures, heartbreaks, and moments of shame that cut so deep they left a permanent mark. A child told they are not good enough hears it once, but carries it for decades. A teenager who fails publicly builds a wall of self-protection that quietly destroys their ambition for years. You are, in many ways, still running beliefs that a younger, less experienced version of you created just to survive a painful moment. And here is what makes it even more powerful. Your brain will go to extraordinary lengths to protect those beliefs. It will sabotage opportunities that contradict them. It will dismiss compliments that challenge them. It will manufacture excuses, create conflicts, and generate fear, all to keep your internal world consistent with what it already believes. This is not weakness. This is how the human brain is designed. But design can be redesigned. Wiring can be rewired. The first and most critical step in rewiring your mind is developing the courage to examine what you actually believe. Not what you say you believe, not what sounds good in conversation, but the raw, unfiltered beliefs running silently in the background of every decision you make. Ask yourself, what do I believe about money? About love? About my own potential? The answers that make you uncomfortable. Those are the ones that are running your life. Those are the beliefs that have been quietly writing your story without your permission. Once you see the belief clearly, it begins to lose its power over you. Awareness is not the finish line, but it is the starting gun. Because the moment you recognize that a belief is just a story your mind adopted at some point in time, you realize something that changes everything. It can be replaced. A belief that was learned. Every single person on this planet has patterns. Mental patterns, emotional patterns, behavioral patterns, invisible tracks that the mind runs on, day after day, without ever stopping to ask whether the destination is still somewhere you actually want to go. These patterns were built through repetition, through conditioning, through years of responding to life in the same way until that response became automatic. And automatic means unconscious. And unconscious means you are no longer in control. The pattern is. Think about the last time you lost your temper over something small. Or the last time you talked yourself out of an opportunity before you even tried. Or the last time you reached for distraction the moment things got uncomfortable. You didn't decide to do those things, not really. The pattern decided for you. It fired before your conscious mind even had a chance to weigh in. That is how deeply embedded these loops become. They don't ask for your permission. They simply run, and they keep running until something or someone forces them to stop. Tony Robbins teaches that the most dangerous patterns are not the obvious ones. It's not the explosive anger or the visible self-destruction that does the most damage. It's the quiet patterns. The subtle habit of shrinking in a room full of people. The unconscious tendency to push away love the moment it gets too close. The silent inner voice that whispers don't bother every time ambition starts to rise. These patterns are dangerous precisely because they feel normal. They feel like personality. They feel like you, when in reality, they are just old programming that has never been challenged. Breaking a pattern requires more than awareness. It requires interruption. Tony calls this a pattern interrupt, a deliberate, sometimes dramatic shift in your physical state, your focus, or your language that disrupts the automatic sequence before it completes. Because here is what neuroscience confirms, and Tony Robbins has taught for decades. A pattern that is interrupted consistently begins to weaken. The neural pathway that once fired automatically starts to lose its dominance. The groove that felt like a canyon slowly becomes a scratch. And a scratch can be crossed. A canyon cannot. But interruption alone is not enough. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the human mind. When you break an old pattern, something must replace it. This is the part most people miss. They fight the old behavior, they resist the old thought, they white-knuckle their way through the urge, and then wonder why they always fall back. You cannot simply remove a pattern. You must replace it with something stronger, something that serves the life you are building, something your nervous system can grab onto when the old trigger fires and the old road disappears beneath your feet. The most powerful moment in any human being's life is not when they achieve something great. It is the split second between stimulus and response, when they realize they have a choice. That pause, that tiny, electric space, is where transformation lives. Most people never find it because the pattern moves too fast. But once you slow it down, once you see it clearly, once you interrupt it with intention and replace it with purpose, everything changes. Because you are no longer a prisoner of your past responses. You become the architect of your future ones. And that kind of power, the power to choose your pattern, leads directly into something even deeper. The force that makes every pattern change either stick or collapse. That force is not discipline. It is not strategy. It is not even willpower. It is emotion. Most people believe that change is a logical process. They think if they gather enough information, build the right plan, and follow the correct steps, transformation will follow naturally. And so they read the books, attend the seminars, write the goals, build the spreadsheets, and still, nothing fundamentally shifts. Not because the information was wrong. Not because the plan was flawed. But because logic alone has never, not once in the history of human beings, rewired a brain. Only emotion can do that. Only feeling, raw and real and deeply personal, has the power to burn a new pathway into the nervous system and make it permanent. Tony Robbins has said it plainly and powerfully. We are not thinking machines that feel, we are feeling machines that think. Every decision you have ever made, no matter how rational it appeared on the surface, was ultimately driven by an emotional undercurrent running beneath it. The career you chose, the person you married, the dream you abandoned. Emotion was the engine. Logic was just the story you told afterward to make it make sense. This is not a flaw in human design. This is the design. And once you understand it, you stop trying to think your way into change and start learning how to feel your way there. Here is what neuroscience has confirmed about how the brain actually rewires itself. New neural pathways are not formed by calm, passive repetition alone. They are formed, strengthened, and locked in place by emotional intensity. The stronger the feeling attached to an experience, the deeper the imprint it leaves on the brain. This is why a single traumatic event can reshape a person's psychology for life. And why a single moment of profound inspiration, if felt deeply enough, can do exactly the same thing in the opposite direction. Emotion is not decoration. Emotion is the mechanism. It is the ink with which the brain writes its most permanent instructions. This is why Tony Robbins does not simply lecture from a stage. He moves. He shouts. He whispers. He creates environments of such intense emotional energy that people's nervous systems are shaken loose from their old states and forced into something new. He understands what most traditional self-help approaches miss entirely. You cannot talk someone into a new identity. You have to make them feel it. You have to create an emotional experience so powerful, so visceral, so undeniable that the brain has no choice but to take notice and begin rewiring around it. Change that is only intellectual is change that will not last the week. Change that is emotional is change that can last a lifetime. And this applies not just to seminars and breakthroughs. It applies to every single day. The emotions you consistently live in become the atmosphere your brain grows in. If you marinate daily in frustration, in anxiety, in resentment, your brain builds its architecture around those states. It becomes efficient at producing them. It starts to seek them out, even when life gives you no reason to feel them. But the reverse is equally true. If you deliberately, consistently, and with full intention cultivate emotions like gratitude, certainty, passion, and love, your brain begins to rewire itself around those states instead. You don't have to wait for life to give you a reason to feel powerful. You have to choose the feeling first, and let the brain follow. This is the part that demands everything from you. Because choosing your emotional state in the middle of difficulty, in the middle of pain, in the middle of a life that is not yet what you want it to be, is one of the hardest things a human being can do. It feels unnatural. It feels dishonest. It feels like pretending. But Tony Robbins draws a sharp and important line between pretending and priming. Pretending is surface. Priming is deep. Priming is the deliberate act of generating a real emotional state within yourself. Through movement, through breath, through memory, through vision, until that state is no longer manufactured but genuinely felt. And once it is genuinely felt, the brain begins its work. Because emotion is not just the fuel of change, it is the signal the brain has been waiting for, the green light that says, something important is happening here, pay attention, remember this, build around this. And what the brain builds around is exactly what repetition tells it to build. Because a single emotional experience, no matter how powerful, is rarely enough on its own. The brain needs confirmation. It needs consistency. It needs to see the same signal fired again and again before it commits to restructuring itself around it. This is where repetition enters, not as a mundane, mechanical act, but as one of the most profound and transformative forces available to any human being willing to use it with intention. Think about how you learned to walk. No one handed you a manual. No one explained the physics of balance or the biomechanics of forward motion. You fell. You got up. You fell again. You got up again. And through that relentless, unconscious repetition, your brain quietly and methodically built the neural network that now allows you to walk across a room without a single conscious thought. What was once impossible became effortless. Not through talent, not through a single breakthrough moment, but through repetition applied consistently over time. The brain did not make an exception for walking. It will not make an exception for confidence, for discipline, for abundance, or for love. The same law governs all of it. Tony Robbins teaches that repetition is the mother of skill, but it goes deeper than skill. Repetition is the mother of identity. When you think a thought once, it is just a thought. When you think it 100 times, it begins to feel true. When you think it 1,000 times, it becomes a belief. And when that belief is reinforced through consistent action and emotional engagement, it stops being something you have and becomes something you are. This is the alchemy of repetition. It does not just change what you do. It changes who you are at the deepest level of your self-concept. And a person who has genuinely changed their identity does not struggle to maintain new behavior, because the behavior is no longer an effort. It is simply an expression of who they now are. This is precisely why most change attempts fail. People make a powerful decision in a peak moment. They feel it, they mean it, they believe it in that instant with everything they have. And then life returns to normal. The emotion fades. The environment stays the same. The old triggers reappear. And without repetition to reinforce the new pattern, the brain does what it always does. It defaults back to the most well-worn path. The old highway pulls them back because it is still the strongest road in the system. The new path, visited only once in a moment of inspiration, is too faint to follow in the dark. Repetition is what paves that new road. Repetition is what widens it, strengthens it, and eventually makes it the path of least resistance. But here is what separates those who use repetition powerfully from those who go through the motions without result. It is the quality of presence brought to each repetition that determines its impact. Mindless repetition builds habit. Intentional repetition builds transformation. When you repeat a new thought, a new affirmation, a new physical ritual, and you bring to it full emotional engagement, full conscious awareness, full belief in what you are building, each repetition lands deeper than the last. The brain does not just log the frequency. It registers the intensity. It measures the meaning. And the repetitions that are soaked in genuine feeling and clear intention are the ones that restructure the architecture of the mind at its very foundation. Every morning you choose the same empowering thought. Every day you take the same courageous action. Every night you reinforce the same powerful identity. And slowly, invisibly, undeniably, the person you are becoming begins to overtake the person you used to be. And that new person, forged through emotion and locked in through repetition, is ready for the one thing that will determine whether all of this growth ultimately leads somewhere real. And that one thing is ownership. Total, unconditional, radical ownership of your mind, your choices, and your life. Most people are waiting. Waiting for the right moment, the right circumstances, the right person to finally give them permission to become who they were always meant to be. They carry their past like a backpack full of stones. Every disappointment, every betrayal, every failure adding another weight that slows them down and bends them toward the ground. But Tony Robbins draws a line in the sand that cannot be ignored. The moment you stop blaming your past for your present is the moment your future finally begins. Ownership is not about pretending the pain didn't happen. It is about refusing to let it drive. When you take radical ownership, something shifts in the brain that no book, no seminar, and no motivational speech can manufacture for you. You stop being the victim of your story and become the author of it. Every excuse you release creates space for a solution. Every blame you drop frees up energy that can now be redirected toward building something real. Tony Robbins has stood in front of millions of people from every background imaginable, broken, lost, defeated, And the ones who transformed were never the ones with the easiest lives. They were the ones who decided, in a single moment of absolute clarity, that they would own everything from this point forward. This is where the rewiring becomes complete. The belief has been examined and replaced. The pattern has been broken and rebuilt. The emotion has been harnessed and directed. The repetition has carved a new identity into the architecture of the mind. And now ownership seals it all, because a rewired mind without ownership is a sports car without a driver. You have done the inner work. You have built the foundation. Now you must stand on it, claim it, and refuse to abandon it when life tests you. Your mind is yours. Your story is yours. Your future is yours. And it all begins the moment you decide, enough waiting, enough blaming, enough shrinking. From this moment forward, you own it all.